now that we interviewed him last week and you've had maybe time to digest it a little bit further, I don't know what, am I missing anything here? It just seems like every sort of check you would want on your list to be marked when it comes to hiring a defensive backs coach. Patrick Surtain brings it. And, Corey and I disagreed about, he thinks that maybe Patrick Surtain, his biggest, draw for Florida State and Mike Norvell is that pipeline and those contacts that he has down in South Florida, which I'm absolutely in no way, shape, or form saying that it's not. But I think you're getting a really good coach, man. I mean, a guy that's led a program down in the South to win state championships, a really strong program, but been in the NFL as a player, as a coach. I'm more excited about that aspect. What have you been taking away from kind of processing this hire for Mike Norvell and company?
Yeah, and as it relates to Corey's point and to our Wilmer's question, we don't know yet about the impact on recruiting because things got shut down for February. February is a dead month, so they can't have any in-person contact. There is recruiting happening by telephone and things like that, but I don't think you're going to see any real returns on Patrick Surtain, and maybe till this spring when you see maybe they get some guys up for visits that you haven't had before. I can tell you from South Florida, just like any part of the country, people that are familiar with you have a better chance of getting into buildings, getting into, as a high school football coach at Heritage down there, he knows all those high school coaches and they're not going to shut their doors to him, especially now that he's at Florida State. So I think that's a positive, but we won't really see those results probably till later this spring at the earliest, maybe when guys start showing up at spring practices from schools in South Florida that they haven't really had a lot of success with in the past. But I agree with you. I think from a coaching standpoint, a knowledge standpoint, and that's something that Brian McFadden, a friend of all of our shows and Warchant was talked about when they hired him, was when Brian McFadden played in the NFL, he would go to Pat Surtain for advice on playing cornerback. I mean, he's a guy that would share information with other players and they went to him because he was seen as a good teacher and a good communicator. So I think there's evidence to what you're saying. The other piece of it that we haven't really talked about a lot, but I think is really important, and he talked about it during his interview some, is that he kind of knows all these guys. So it's going to be a pretty seamless fit. He coached, Randy Shannon was with the Dolphins when he was a player there. Being in South Florida, he's got a very good relationship with him. He's originally from New Orleans. David Johnson, the running backs coach, is from there. He's got a lot of connections to these guys way before they ever got to Florida State. And the fact that I'm not saying they all signed off on it, but I would imagine none of them balked at it. I think they all probably thought it was a good idea, and it could be a really seamless fit from the standpoint of just the camaraderie and the coaching staff, because I think they've got something good here, right? I mean, like, you're there every day too, right? You could speak to it. They seem like a coaching staff that likes each other, that gets along well, and that may sound kumbaya-ish and who cares. We've all been around football staffs that didn't get along well together, and it does make a difference. And so I think that standpoint, it should be a pretty seamless transition adding him to the staff.